Jenna, Jenna, we have a second round. Buongiorno a tutti, buongiorno. Diamo in particolare il benvenuto a quelli che sono arrivati questa mattina. C'è un gruppo consistente che viene dal continente africano. Sapete che per muoversi in Europa, per chi viene dal continente africano, è molto difficile attraversare gli ostacoli della burocrazia per avere i visti, e quindi alcuni sono stati fermati nei loro aeroporti e hanno dovuto avere un percorso di avvicinamento molto più lungo di chi invece nello spazio Schengen si può muovere più liberamente. Quindi anche un applauso a questi nostri amici che hanno... Forse però proviamo le traduzioni, perché non siamo sicuri che tutti possano ascoltare nella loro voce, nella loro lingua. Lo spagnolo funziona? E l'espagnol? Non funziona ancora? L'inglese? L'inglese funziona. Francese? Forse mancano i traduttori nelle cabine, le traduttrici. Francese funziona? No, non ancora. Il portoghese? Sì? Il tedesco? Ancora non c'è. L'olandese? Benissimo. Poi c'è il croato, che non sappiamo mai dove sono i croati. Là in fondo, benissimo. Lo slovacco e il ceco? Sì, benissimo. Il serbo? Ottimo. Il coreano? Bene. E l'italiano, perché parleremo poi in inglese sul palco. Se qualcuno può mettere la cuffia con la canale 11, funziona. Allora, mancava il francese, se non sbaglio, e lo spagnolo. Lo spagnolo è arrivato e il francese? No, il tedesco funzionava. Cristina mi ha fatto segno che... Il francese c'è? Diamo per ottenuto anche questo obiettivo. Vedo che ci sono ancora molte sedie vuote, probabilmente la colazione sta impegnando, tanti arrivano con i pullman da fuori e quindi...
Quando siamo così insieme è difficile, il tragitto dalla porta fin qua è molto lungo, lo sappiamo. Si incontrano tanti amici.
Volevamo anche approfittare per presentarvi la nostra pianista, che si chiama Jenna. Jenna Espelita dalle Filippine e che ha un tocco straordinario. Le lasciamo poi ancora un secondo momento prima di riprendere con il programma.
Allora, a te. Grazie Gena. Così iniziamo ancora oggi con l'arte questa giornata che sarà una sfida. Sapete perché? Perché dopo una giornata così forte come quella di ieri, sarà una sfida fare che questa sia ancora più bella. Ieri abbiamo cominciato in alto con Jeffrey Sachs che già ci ha fatto vivere un momento un po' eccezionale, no? E anche questo dialogo con voi ragazzi è stato un momento che ha toccato tanti. Di questo siamo grati a lui e a voi, veramente. E poi continuata la giornata col panel molto denso, ricco, con anche in pomeriggio il momento con Felix, che anche quello è stato qualcosa di molto stimolante, molto, che penso ci ha interpellati tutti, e questa premiazione con queste tre iniziative che sono state presenti, che ci hanno preso il cuore tutti, no? Quindi ci dicevamo adesso, ma vedrete che non sarete delusi. Oggi sarà un'esplosione, diciamo, ieri un concentrato, oggi un'esplosione di novità, di ricchezza, di cose varie. Ma così insieme ci prendiamo questa sfida di fare di questa giornata ancora un passo in avanti riguardo ieri.
Volevamo anche farvi una proposta, siccome abbiamo sottolineato l'importanza anche di fare networking, no? È chiaro che è difficilissimo per chi è arrivato oggi poterlo in qualche modo informare di quello che è successo ieri. Abbiamo un piccolo video che vedremo fra un attimo che in 2 o 3 minuti ci racconta le emozioni della giornata di ieri. Però, e qui mi viene in mente anche tutta la tradizione africana, che è una tradizione orale, no? Ci si può raccontare quello che è stato ieri. Si diceva ieri dal palco che sono più importanti alle volte gli intervalli che non quello che succede su questo palco. Quindi sfruttiamo questi momenti anche per raccontare a chi è arrivato oggi quella che è stata l'esperienza di ieri.
Così diamo un benvenuto speciale a quelli che ci raggiungono, che hanno avuto imprevisti, difficoltà a venire, che ora sono pienamente con noi, come se avessero vissuto la giornata di ieri, che è anche tutta vostra. E appunto qualcuno di questi lavoratori dell'ombra ci ha preparato immagini, anche che qualche volta parlano di più, ma abbiamo anche questa immagine viva che continua a crescere davanti ai nostri occhi. A me commuove ogni volta che li vedo, perché si sta prendendo forma qualcosa. A questo punto comincia a venire voglia di pensare, ma cosa stanno disegnando? Cosa stanno... Prende vita poco a poco quest'opera, no? E sia questa immagine che appare, che ci prende, sia anche l'immagine viva del loro lavorare davanti a noi così discreto, così il modo in cui lo fanno è anche molto bello.
Quello che mi colpisce, Anouk, sono anche le spalle curve di queste persone che sembrano camminare verso una terra promessa, verso una speranza, però con la fatica, con la polvere che imbratta i loro abiti. Vedremo domani in quale direzione evolverà questo quadro.
E loro sono anche l'icona di tutti gli altri che non vediamo, che stanno lavorando per tutto quello che stiamo vivendo, perché loro sono lì sul palco, ma dietro le quinte, in regia, in cabina, in cucina, sono anche tutti quelli che anche loro lavorano per noi in questo momento, così li teniamo presenti tutti come se fossero sul palco.
Io direi che se la regia è pronta possiamo mandare le immagini di ieri, ma chiamiamo già sul palco Giovanni e Susi della Spagna, Giovanni del Brasile, che animeranno un po' come ieri questo momento interattivo, anche con queste nuove tecniche di interazione. Lo faranno in inglese, per cui poi bisognerà cambiare e mettere la cuffia sull'inglese. Però prima vediamo il video.
My name is Hervé Kuafalonti. I am from Cameroon.
My name is Chang-ho Park. I'm from Korea.
Eu sou Melissa e venho do Brasil.
Sono Marica e vengo dalla comunità di Noma Delfia in provincia di Grosseto.
Lorenzo da Firenze. Allora, mi è piaciuto molto alcune esperienze di queste persone, tra cui l'esperienza del giacinto d'acqua in Africa, che è un esempio molto intelligente di come trasformare un disagio, un problema, in un'opportunità. E questo dà molta speranza e dà molta motivazione anche per portare un contributo in situazioni difficili.
If you think the problem is the drought, I saw definitely many clouds are gathering for the rain. So, prophetic economy, I saw the prophetic economy for the sort of the some possibility.
La cosa più bella che ho visto è la differenza delle persone che ci sono in questo evento. Cioè, a parte che si parlano tipo 10 lingue diverse, e poi c'è dall'adulto magari 65enne, 70enne al ragazzino di 9 anni, e quindi anche l'incontro che si è fatto insieme si parla in modo che possano capire tutti, sia il ragazzino piccolo che l'adulto.
Eu adorei a apresentação dos prêmios agora à noite, porque eu achei que são iniciativas muito bonitas e que devem realmente aparecer para que todo mundo possa ver. E são iniciativas que nos mostraram, são muito emocionantes, né? E toda a carga social que elas trazem toca demais o coração, por isso eu adorei, achei muito bonito.
We need to make also small steps, no? Little by little. That touched me a lot. And here we are also thinking that yes, even what you can do, a simple thing can be a good thing. There was a scout boy, 12 years old, who said to us that you can start by weighing the weight of the garbage you collect every day, so that it helps you to understand the weight you have on society. I was very happy to hear about it, and then I said, yes, that's something that we can start with.
Diversity.
Esperança.
Consapevolezza.
Amazing!
Hi everyone, a very good morning for everyone that's with us here in this room, and for you too that is following us on YouTube or Facebook or whatever streaming that you're now with us. So welcome again.
Good morning, everybody. We have another opportunity to communicate, to collaborate, to do networking, which is the methodology of this event.
So as we had yesterday, the many opportunities to share our thoughts, our convictions, our ideas, and we could share between us and among us. We now will ask you a little bit of feedback or a little bit of another words, and then we'll build again the word cloud in the screen with another question today. And so we would like really ask you to use that application that we shown yesterday, but not now, so just wait a minute. There are some rules for it to work right now. But it's important that during the day, if you have some questions about the talks that are being held, or if you'd like to share your thoughts with those ones who won yesterday the prize here, who got the award, or would you like to send a message to Felix or for anyone that were here on the stage? You can do it throughout our application. We are receiving many messages from you here and also from the people from the streaming services. So it's very important for us
It means you have the opportunity to give feedback to the best practices, or you have also the opportunity to make questions to Jeffrey Sachs or Felix in the application.
So, for now, we would like to ask you again. I think that you're seated in a different position from yesterday, and possibly the people that are around you are different ones. And now we'll ask you again to make groups of 3, and with one mobile phone only in this group, you choose between you, and you access the application. I'm not sure if you have the possibility to put in the screen the address again. I don't think so. We didn't prepare it yet. So, but the address that you should type is http, okay, lá, Prophetich Economy App, so app.org.
It's very important to use only one mobile phone every 3 people, because if not, it doesn't work.
And did you already found your group? So you can do it right now. I mean, and then you go through the program, and there's in the program, this moment, there's a blue button saying app. You just go there and answer the question. We'll be with you. Yeah, it's also important if those who are connected to the Wi-Fi and not using the mobile phone, please switch it off. Switch the connections off. Okay? Give me 1 minute. Yes. I'm going upstairs to...
Those who don't use the mobile phone, please, in flight mode. So if you go through the program, you will see the question, what does prophetic economy suggest to you? This is the question for today. Is working or not?
Yeah. Let's check with them.
Okay. Is it working or not?
No, actually, no. Veramente è perché è in quest'altro punto del programma. So, the question of today is, what does mean prophetic economy to you? right? What prophetic economy suggests to you? And let's check here if you already have any ideas.
Public, it's okay.
Oh, nice. So where are you from? Okay. Would you like to share with me? Okay, but can you stand, please? Yeah, we have here a very diverse group. Could you please share with us where are you from and what does prophetic economy suggest to you?
Hello, I'm Alexander. I'm from Norway. And prophetic economy for me means hope.
Great.
I'm Josiane, I'm from Canada, and for me it means transformation.
I'm Jean from India, and for me it means values.
So thank you very much for your contribution. So, Susie, where are you? Okay.
So here we have also 3 words to share. Where are you from?
Napoli.
And the other rest of the group?
Napoli, sì.
Napoli. And the words are?
Interdipendenza.
And?
Cambiamento.
Cambiamento and?
Fraternità.
Fraternità. Right.
Okay, so we have interdependence, change, and fraternity. And that's great. So we already have our cloud being made. And that's good because many of the words are very similar from the ones that we got yesterday, right? So we still have hope.
Future.
Yeah, still have change. But now we have connection too. So that's great also to have a different word and it's getting bigger. I mean, so...
Remember, the bigger ones are the most repeated ones. Opportunity.
And opportunity also. So that's what you guys here in the room and also the ones that are following us in YouTube or in any other streaming are saying that that's what prophetic economy for them. So thank you very much for this intervention. And
we will see
we'll stay connected, okay?
Yeah.
Be with us, share your thoughts, and share with everyone what you're feeling and what you expect to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Grazie. Grazie Giovanni, grazie Susi. Ecco, adesso passiamo al momento forte di questa mattinata con un panel che adesso introduciamo e continuiamo insieme, quindi anche con i ragazzi.
Forse dico 2 parole sul tema di questa mattina, a cui assisteranno anche i ragazzi. È un tema impegnativo. Sapete che negli ultimi 20-30 anni l'economia si deve confrontare con un elefante in the room, no? nella sala, che è la finanza. Cioè, la finanza è diventata un settore molto potente, un settore che non crea, diciamo, valore produttivo, ma che doveva servire soprattutto come lubrificante dell'attività economica. In realtà la finanza è diventata un po' fine a se stessa. Come diceva Zamagni ieri, ha il suo obiettivo all'interno, che è la moltiplicazione, diciamo, dei guadagni finanziari. E i mercati finanziari sono un'istituzione molto lontana dalla vita della gente, delle persone normali. Sono spesso diciamo, delle istituzioni finanziarie che muovono quantità di denaro molto ingente. Sono anche sistemi automatizzati, cioè dei calcolatori di intelligenza artificiale che attraverso degli algoritmi spostano miliardi da un investimento all'altro. E allora, di fronte a questo settore, bisogna parlare un linguaggio forte. Non si può, è un settore che reagisce ai segnali forti degli incentivi. E quindi oggi sentiremo parlare di cosa significa, in qualche modo, far rispondere la finanza alle esigenze della gente normale. E avremo l'esperienza di un intero paese che sta facendo un cammino. So I would like to...
Aspetta, volevo dire, cioè, ci siamo chiesti se era bene che voi ragazzi stavate in sala per un tema così tecnico, perché è un tema difficile, però ci è sembrato che proprio perché è molto importante, allora siamo contenti che ci siate e noi crediamo che voi siete capaci di capire anche le cose più difficili. Sappiamo che tante volte a scuola fate questa esperienza di affrontare temi difficili, tecnici, quindi crediamo che voi siete capaci e vedrete che crediamo anche che vi piacerà quello che diranno, quello che hanno fatto, perché è importante che anche su questo fronte voi siate informati e sappiate cosa possiamo fare. Va bene? Ci state?
So we switch again to English, and I would like to invite all the panel to, or we start with a keynote, right? But maybe, yes, Thomas Inshua? Okay, you are coming all together, and I just would like to introduce to you Thomas Inshua, who is the Executive Director and co-founder of the Global Catholic Climate Movement, a movement which is seeking to bring Laudato Si into life. Thomas is originally from Argentina and now is based in Rome. So he will introduce the keynote speaker and later on moderate the panel session. So, Thomas, I give you.
Buongiorno, good morning. I'm delighted to be here with you all to introduce today's panel. As we know, I think maybe the line to describe today's panel is that a prophetic economy needs prophetic finance. All these prophetic economic activities that we've been discussing need prophetic finance to support them and scale them up. And of course, we know that this is a big challenge. We know that the financial system today is not there yet. But there are some signs of hope, and that's what we'll be discussing today. There's an urgent need to shift the economy and finance towards those activities that we've been hearing, that on one side, to shift those investments away from activities and industries that are harmful for people and planet, towards those prophetic economic activities that are instead supporting and fulfilling that integral human development. So we'll start with an introduction by Jean on this new ethical vision for finance and the regulations that are needed to enable that in the first place. And then we'll hear from a fascinating case study, which is the case study of Ireland as a nation, as a nationwide case study. So I'll start by introducing Jean. Jean is the senior advisor at CITSE, an international alliance of Catholic social justice organizations based in Brussels. Her main focus areas are gender equality, finance, and systemic change. She has led international civil society work in the UN's Financing for Development process and European civil society advocacy in the lead up to the adoption of the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. She holds a master's in international law from the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands. So we'll start with Jen's presentation, and then I'll introduce the other speakers as we proceed. So the floor is yours, Jen.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you to all the organizers for inviting Sitze to this event and to inviting me. It has been a fascinating day yesterday, not only listening to the speakers, but also learning about the Focolare movement and the deep spirituality that drives you all and binds you all. It has been absolutely fascinating. So thank you for inviting us and for me to be able to speak on this panel. So the topic of my presentation is finance for a prophetic economy. But before I go into finance for a prophetic economy, I'd like to first consider the question, actually today, does finance really contribute to a prophetic economy? And if you look at what Pope Francis says in Laudato Si', he observes, economic powers continue to justify the current global system where priority tends to be given to speculation and the pursuit of financial gain, which fail to take the context into account, let alone the effects on human dignity and the natural environment. So first of all, I'd like to look at the different ways in which finance is an obstacle rather than contributing force to the prophetic economy. First of all, looking at the value system that drives the financial system at the moment. It's far, far from contributing to the vision of a prophetic economy that we are aspiring to. In Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis writes of the economy that kills as one of the challenges of today's world. He says, today everything comes under the laws of competition and the survival of the fittest, where the powerful feed upon the powerless. And I thought that this sculpture from Timothy Schmalz, the Canadian artist, was very, very apt to demonstrate this. Pope Francis says, as a consequence, masses of people find themselves excluded and marginalized, without work, without possibilities, without any means of escape. He goes on to say the current financial crisis can make us overlook the fact that it originated in a profound human crisis, the denial of the primacy of the human person. A critical part of the problem is the role that banks and bankers play. The way that risks are transferred from the financial actors to society. After the first financial crash of the 20th century in the 1930s, finance was pretty strictly regulated. Then came the 1980s and the election of Ronald Reagan in the US. His most famous quote was, "Government is not the solution to the problem, government is the problem." During his administration, the world of finance was dramatically deregulated. As more and more financial institutions were listed on the stock market, partners and owners were no longer viable if things went wrong, something that was referred to yesterday by Jeff Sachs. To attract and then appease shareholders, greater risks were taken. From then on, it has been downhill for society, but the financial sector has just grown and grown. Bankers are faced with immense temptations to take risks with their bank's capital and reputation, knowing if they didn't act, then their colleagues across the floor would. This dynamic becomes all the more dangerous as globalization continues to create a single market for finance. Not only are partnerships more and more listed on stock exchange or taken over by publicly listed banks, they are also allowed to go on global shopping sprees. Wave after wave of mergers and acquisitions means banks could generate higher profits than the GDPs of their host countries. making institutions too big to fail. So big that if they go bust, they can bring down the whole system with them. And when excessive risks turn sour, it's the taxpayer and society and the environment that suffers, as we see in many countries in Europe, especially in Greece. The expansion of the financial markets is not only about the volume of trading, it is also about the increasing diversity of the kinds of transactions and the kinds of financial players, and their intersection with various parts of the economy and society, which is now called financialization, which means that it is not only banks, but also your regular your regular supermarket, or even your car retail company that is offering you finance. So it's not only banks and financial institutions that are becoming more and more sophisticated and complex, but very, very real actors in the real economy that are becoming as complex. And when this level of complexity increases, it's not only the managers, but the actual regulators that are not able to see the risks and control the complexity of the financial system. Another issue is the values that not only run the financial system, but what are come to be seen as normal. Everybody was shocked when, on the back of the financial crisis, the greed of bankers was revealed. Their salaries, their bonuses, their lavish lifestyles. Yet this headline, taken from The Guardian in 2010, 2 years after the crisis broke, demonstrates how, after the initial crisis and indignation, greed became the norm. Similarly, while everybody was shocked and angry at the extent how the deception and greed of financiers has had such a deep impact on society, today the belief that companies could be run solely to secure rewards for their shareholders without consideration of worker welfare, customer loyalty, or doing business rightly has gone right down the agenda. What is more, greed, which was considered individual, has become institutional. Another big issue that a lot of social movements are talking about today is how finance has a deep link and impact on the whole concept of phenomenon of extractivism. Extractivism is not a new phenomenon. It goes right back 500 years to the capitalist system, the origins of the capitalist systems in the colonization and conquest of the Americas and Africa and Asia. This extractivist model of accumulation has been determined ever since by the metropolitan centers of nascent capitalism. Some regions specialized in the extraction and production of raw materials, which are called primary commodities, while others took on the role of producing manufacturing goods. The former exported nature, the latter imported it. Extractivism, which is the basis of the global economic system today, requires huge amounts of capital. And it also results in the accumulation of wealth and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a very few people. It tends to concentrate foreign investment as well in certain sectors of the host country's economy. For countries relying on primary commodity export, the fluctuation of commodity prices on the world markets makes them dependent on financial markets and exposes them to all sorts of social, economic, and even political risks as a result of the erratic fluctuation. For the lucky few who can profit from the influx of this foreign investment, it results in greater purchasing power, which is often misunderstood as well-being. which results in a greater amount of consumerism, which in turn brings with itself social and environmental ills. An important issue for today's panel is how finance contributes to climate change. The Carbon Majors report in 2017 stated that half of global industrial emissions since 1988, the year that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was established, can be traced to just 25 corporations and state-owned entities. The scale of historic emissions associated with fossil fuel producers is large enough to have significantly contributed to climate change, according to this report. ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, and Chevron are identified as among the highest emitting investor-owned companies since 1988. There continues to remain a tension between short-termism and climate action. The same report talks about how a value of 2 trillion of so-called stranded assets risks the stability of the global economy if these companies do not really face up to the facts. And that's something we're also going to be talking about in today's panel. Yep. So then comes back to the question of today's discussion. So how can finance support a prophetic economy? To answer this question, I borrowed a model which is used very much in the discussion on agroecology. It is a model that was created by Stephen Gleisman. It has got 5 levels, and the first 4 levels are basically quite fluid. It does not mean that there is a strict condition that the first level has to be achieved to go to the second level. But basically, it is essential that all 4 levels are realized to reach the 5th level, a new financial system. So let me go through each one of them. First of all, level 1, increasing the efficiency of the current financial system through better regulation. In 2009 and 10, at the tip of the precipice that many governments realized that they were during the financial crisis, to prevent the financial system from hurtling out of control, there were many measures discussed to make banks less vulnerable to exogenous shocks and to dam the tide of illicit financial flows. Unfortunately, thanks to the massive financial lobby, the revolving doors between politics and finance, and a baseless fear that controlling finance would reduce the competitiveness of the economic system, government action has been severely diluted. Many issues regarding tax governance, transparency, debt have been hardly addressed. Many are concerned that today, in 2018, 10 years after the financial crisis, we are on the brink of another financial crisis, as we see sovereign debt becoming more and more unsustainable. I'm sure those of you from Italy have been following a lot of the discussion about how the European Commission is warning Italy about the unsustainability of the debt projections of the country. As part of the UN's Financing for Development process, which I've been a part of, many governments, particularly from the South and civil society, have been working towards a holistic and socially just package of measures to make finance support sustainable development. Measures from tax and trade justice to finance supporting governments to fulfill their human rights, obligations through public ODA or overseas development assistance, structured frameworks to orderly address sovereign debt crisis, measures to increase the resilience of economies and the financial system are all part of the discussion. Unfortunately, what we see is the urgency that compelled many governments in 2008 to address a lot of these problems has basically been watered down into a sense of helplessness, I don't know. Ironically, even with the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, governments are more than ever before relying on private finance. So that is level one, where things are still far from perfect. Going to level two, where we slowly see a substitution of conventional finance, finance which is so ridden with all sorts of problems and intrinsic complexities towards alternative finance. And here I'd like to talk about the vibrant movement for alternative finance. Proposals and actions take various forms and range in scale and import. The divestment and investment movement that we're going to be talking about today is an important measure to address investor responsibility, encouraging institutional and individual investors to divest from major carbon emitters and invest in renewable energy systems. Similar calls have been made to divest from extractive industries that do not respect human rights and the environment. Additionally, you have cooperatives, people-led alternative currencies in ecological villages and transition towns. These are all really important movements that are leading from the bottom up towards this financial transition. Level three, the redesigning of the financial system to make it supportive of a prophetic economy. At the official level, there are efforts being made to redesign the financial system to make it supportive of sustainable development. In the EU, for instance, the European Commission has been putting in place what they call a sustainable financial action plan. One of the most concrete aspects of this plan is to create a sustainable finance label, which is supposed to be based on climate impacts and environmental and social governance criteria. Unfortunately, the lack of a holistic approach means that potential human rights impacts of investments on communities are still not being adequately addressed. The European Parliament has also called on the Commission to introduce what they call carbon stress tests to report on the exposure to stranded carbon and environmentally harmful assets. In the same vein, you have the fair trade movement, which has worked for years now and has won some very important victories to mainstream principles of fair trade in EU procurement policy, and at the municipal level through the creation of fair trade towns, which I'm sure there are a fair share in Italy. As labels, fair trade and sustainable finance do face the limitations that they remain consumer and investor choices, whether or not to choose fair trade or sustainable finance. Additionally, neither initiative is questioning the underlying structural issues of extractivism, consumerism, and economic growth. These structural issues must be addressed to be able to realize a financial system within a prophetic economy. Additionally, as long as the values that currently drive the current financial system, profit maximization, competition, GDP growth, continue to trump over values such as the common good, a growth marked by moderation and the capacity to be happy with little, which is how Laudato Si sees the future of finance, such initiatives will remain superficial greenwashing exercises. So then we go to level 4, which is the creation of alternative platforms and relationships. From the social solidarity economy to the shared economy, many efforts are being made to shape another economy and define the role of finance and financial relationships. The lessons learned from the cooperative movement, from alternative currency systems, fair trade towns, transition towns, eco-villages are very valuable and teach us very important lessons of how a future financial system should look like. Some of these key lessons are that small community-run efforts are the most effective. Whether it is a local power station or a community garden, a local farmer's market, a community-run supermarket, a repair cafe, a community investment for young entrepreneurs. When the community puts its hands together and behind any initiative, it contributes to a bigger tapestry. Gender equality, women's leadership, diversity issues make community action even more resilient. As Pope Francis writes in Laudato Si, social problems must be addressed by community networks and not simply by the sum of individual good deeds. The ecological conversion needs to bring about the lasting change, which is also a community conversion. So that brings me to the final point, level 5. So what would a new global financial system look like? As I said earlier, a new global financial system cannot be imposed from the top. Neither will it come from one day to the next. It is an organic process, the speed of which is determined by tipping points. When the alternatives stop being initiatives on the margins of society and become the norm, the mainstream. This is a two-way process. It has to be bottoms up. At the same time, governments need to take measures in the areas of taxation, trade, investment, debt, capital controls, global economic governance, I can go on. Creating truly participatory democracies, protecting space for communities, for civil society, creating positive discrimination for gender equality and diversity to allow these bottom-up initiatives to flourish and converge. But the most fundamental and critical condition to build a new global financial system is the ecological conversion that Pope Francis calls for in Laudato Si. A spirit of generous care, full of tenderness, a loving awareness that we are not disconnected from the rest of creatures, but joined in a splendid universal communion, an alternative understanding of the quality of life, and a prophetic and contemplative lifestyle, one capable of deep enjoyment, free from the obsession with consumption. If the financial system does undergo this ecological conversion, then we can truly talk about a prophetic economy supported by finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And I think that sets the stage very nicely for the next half of the panel, I would say, which is diving into a fascinating case study. It's fascinating in two ways. And in the first place, it's very interesting, the very concept of the fossil fuel divestment, and the divest invest movement per se at a global level is a fascinating case of a movement that is trying to advance this shift in the financial paradigm. And at the same time, Ireland exemplifies as probably the best illustration of that movement in practice. We'll hear at multiple levels how this entire nation is divesting from the fossil fuel industry and investing instead in climate solutions. So we'll hear, I'll introduce very briefly our three speakers for this part, and I'll then let Lorna do a little intro. So first we'll hear from Deputy Thomas Pringle. Thomas is an independent member of the lower house of the Irish Parliament, representing the Northwest constituency of County Donegal. Thomas has been elected twice as a public representative since 2011, and was elected to a local council for a number of years previous. While representing a range of issues affecting his local constituency, Thomas has expanded his portfolio to include climate action in a very significant and prominent way. Most recently, Thomas sponsored the successful fossil fuel divestment bill, which passed the lower house with unanimous and cross-party support. I think that deserves a round of applause. So really historical bill that passed, really first time ever in history that it happened. And well, Thomas hopes to progress community-centered climate action policies as part of his membership in the Congress Committee on Climate Action, in the hopes that Ireland can reverse its reputation as a laggard in climate action and instead to lead. So we'll hear from Thomas more on the bill. Then we'll hear from Deirdre Duff, who's a divestment campaigner and youth activist in Trinity University fossil-free movement, who spearheaded the divestment commitment of that university. I should mention that the divestment movement was born in universities spearheaded by students. So we'll hear more from the front lines of that battle. And then we'll hear from Lorna, who needs no introduction, who spoke yesterday representing Chokra, and also vice chair of GCCM, and many other faith hats she has. So that said, Lorna, do you want to get us started with a quick intro?
We were really keen to present this case study of what we've done in Ireland at Prophetich Economy, because I think Jean's talk is an excellent introduction to finance, and I think it leaves us with the question of where can you start? This is a huge problem, the disconnect between our financial structures and the aspirations that are really palpable in this hall to build a different economy. And I think what we understood in Ireland is that you have to start somewhere. And where we decided to start was with the sector that we believe is causing the most damage and putting at threat the future of the planet and the future of our young people. And that's the fossil fuel industry. We know from the scientists that if the fossil fuel industry burns all the oil that's currently on their reserves, it will be enough for the world to be warmed by between 7 and 8 degrees. And we can't allow that to happen. But what we also know is that the shares in those companies are our shares. So whereas we can point the finger at the bankers, we also have to point the finger at us as consumers, as members of associations, as citizens. So we started some action in Ireland, and we're going to tell you about what we started. We started from nothing, with people saying, what is this all about? And within 2 years, we've achieved a lot through collaboration between Parliament, universities, and the church and other faith organizations. So I want to start just with a little quick video, if I can get it to play. I don't know how this works. Oh. The video is embedded. I'm just talking to the translators. It's embedded in here, so how do you play an embedded video? I think they're going to do it for me. This is when you should have tested the technology. It's the slide before, and it has an embedded video in it. Yeah. Thank you.
From war and conflict to environmental destruction, the challenges we face seem overwhelming. However, change is possible. A safer and more just world can be achieved. For this to happen, it requires people to speak out against injustice and to challenge the status quo. It requires action. This film highlights the power of campaigning through the lens of climate activism. It examines in particular the growing fossil fuel divestment movement in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and how student-led campaigns have resulted in 3 high-profile universities committing to remove their investments from fossil fuels. We meet some of the students behind these campaigns in Trinity College Dublin, NUI Galway, and Queen's University Belfast. We hear about their motivations for campaigning, the tactics they used, and how they overcame challenges. They offer advice for students who want to campaign on climate or other human rights related issues in their universities. We also hear from Trinity College Dublin's Chief Financial Officer about the university's decision to divest from fossil fuels and the role of the student campaign in influencing that decision. Finally, we look at Trogra's campaign, which is calling on the Irish government to divest from fossil fuels.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to address you here today. It's very important to be here, and I'm very glad to be here to share with you some of the views of the divestment programme in Ireland. I'm delighted to be here as it represents the culmination of a 2-year journey which has led Ireland to become the first country in the world to divest its public money from fossil fuel companies. I would like to take the time I have to talk about how Ireland ended up becoming the first country in the world to divest from fossil fuel companies, despite its record as a laggard on climate action. Then I'll speak a bit about what divestment means for the future economy we need to transform and transition into in order for us to have a future at all. I believe divestment campaigners were able to harness and develop key relationships with stakeholders in the form of what I call an activist triangle. A triangular relationship between civil society organisations, universities and other institutions, and sympathetic politicians who have the conviction to act on behalf of grassroots movements. In the context of Ireland, our own activist triangle was formed and became a formidable force for the national divestment movement, and in my opinion, is a shining example of what a successful and powerful activist triangle looks like. Firstly, over 2 years ago, I was approached by Trogra, who are a member of the Stop Climate Chaos Coalition, an association of civil society organisations campaigning to ensure Ireland does its fair share to tackle climate change. Both groups have long advocated for increased focus on climate action and conveyed to me in detail the moral, financial and legal obligation Ireland has as a country to engage in climate action. Next, it took a politician like me, who was sympathetic to grassroots causes, to progress the campaign, thus forming the second part of the activist triangle. After meeting with Trogra, I was entirely sympathetic to the cause of climate justice and immediately asked what I could do. As an independent politician, I was receptive to working with civil society and was free from the policy constraints evident in political parties. Politicians across the political spectrum were willing to work with me, and I was willing to work with them so long as it was for the common good. So when Trócaire presented their idea of trying to get the government itself to divest, I jumped at the opportunity. I could see there was an opportunity for real change due to three factors in our favour. One, the government was in a minority position in Ireland, so it had to listen to opposition ideas. Two, the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund was unique in the world, holding a concentrated amount of public money and is therefore easily targeted in legislation. And three, Ireland had already divested from tobacco and from cluster munitions, so the principle was already accepted there. The appetite was already there and divestment to take place, so we just had to harness it. I felt that a piece of legislation, as opposed to a parliamentary motion or debate, would do more to compel the government to act, so our team got to drafting. This then brings me to the last component of the activist triangle, the institutions. While a number of small institutions in Ireland committed to divest, it was a powerful symbol when Trinity College and Galway University made the decision to divest, all down to the incredible work carried out by student unions to make this happen, and you'll hear from one student in particular shortly. So a series of public meetings and conferences were then arranged in key constituencies by Stop Climate Chaos to compel members of the Finance Committee in the Dáil to progress my bill, which they did with the recommendation that the government and I worked together to move the bill through the remaining stages. And this was a groundbreaking result. After months of hard work and negotiations between my office, the Minister and the Department of Finance, my bill was presented to the lower house of Parliament and passed with unanimous and cross-party support. But how this activist triangle formed is down to building the necessary bridges between the three components in order to bring the fossil fuel divestment campaign to its fore. Climate action activists are the engineers of social change, building bridges that were never thought possible and which will stand the test of time, making irreversible changes for the common good. The bill now stands as a groundbreaking example of many firsts. Ireland, as the first country in the world to divest, but also the first time a bill was co-drafted by opposition and government and passed with cross-party support. It reflected Ireland's readiness to act beyond narrow short-term vested interests and end its relationship with the fossil fuel industry once and for all. It also indicates that time and time again, it's the public that are well ahead of government when it comes to climate action, and that's where the focus needs to be. This bill has now evolved to become a much more than a piece of legislation, and it's a call to action for others to follow suit. But what does it mean to divest from fossil fuel companies, particularly when a country decides to do it? Firstly, and most relevant to this conference, is the fact that it is a prophetic act. It is a bold statement which envisages a future world economy without the main traditional drivers of growth, oil companies. It is an outright rejection of the role which fossil fuel companies have played in our world economy and the special place it has enjoyed at the centre of government policy. Ireland is taking back its future and calling for a citizen-led future global green economy. It's imperative that we call for a completely new economic model. We take note of the UN's recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Action report, in which it states that rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society would be required if we were to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. What we are trying to say here is that we need a completely different economy from the one we have now. One in which growth does not run on excess, but is sustainable, carbon-free and state-led. A just transition must be facilitated in order to create this new green economy. It is in the interest to protect communities and their workers throughout the process of change, to ensure we offset any potentially negative employment effects of decarbonisation, and ensure that all citizens and communities benefit from green infrastructure developments. There must also be a fair distribution of the costs and benefits of low-carbon climate change policies, all of which would help reduce community resistance to energy infrastructure projects. Divestment from fossil fuels is a confrontation not just on carbon emissions, but on the role that large corporations play in the economy, their impact on indigenous and local communities, and the rapacious nature of extraction industries. But let's be honest here. Environmental activists speaking up on behalf of indigenous communities are being killed around the world as they confront these worst polluters. Many are targeted by their own governments or police forces protecting the fossil fuel companies coming in and causing untold damage to the environment. Whether they be wildlife rangers in the Democratic Republic of Congo or indigenous land rights activists in Brazil, the death toll has risen so sharply in recent years that researchers warn that the upward trend is likely to continue if governments and businesses fail to act. Yet governments continue to fail to act. Legislation providing for increased exploration and drilling is being drafted by governments around the world, including the Irish government, and with market projections going beyond the 2030 deadline as presented in the UN report. Divestment is also a rejection of the over-reliance of the private sector to solve the climate crisis, a distrust of global corporations to protect our future and to think beyond short-term interests. The private sector will not respond in time before the 2030 deadline or any other deadline after that. I believe that it will be civil society and the public sector who will be the drivers of change, rather than politicians and the private sector. On the issue of climate justice, we have a responsibility to developing nations to help them to mitigate climate change effects and share green technology and resources to help nations better defend themselves. Close to 60% of the world's population live in countries where an increase in temperature would likely lead to a disastrous effects, and we have a duty in the West to respond to this. So, in a new global green economy, what elements of climate justice will prevail? Well, for a start, the West must learn to consume differently. We don't have 3 separate planet Earths required to feed the consumption rate of Western economies, particularly if everyone on this Earth aspires to do the same. We are consuming large volumes at a high rate and along a linear trajectory not fit for the future of this planet. Yet, despite the growing international interest in a green economy, there lacks a sufficient and universal definition of what constitutes a green economy. What are its universal principles, and to what extent do they constitute green growth or low carbon development, and how do we obtain a steady state economy? How can we accurately measure and encompass how green policies work, impact on national strategies and international agreement? All these issues, believe it or not, are still not agreed upon, even within the EU member states. Without an agreed vision, how will we get there? Realistically, a new international agreement must be drafted, encompassing a shared universal vision of what constitutes a global green economy and how best we can implement a just transition with climate justice central to this vision. I would like to see, as part of this new vision, every country divesting its money from fossil fuel companies. This would indeed speed up the transition to a green economy. But we must start now. The UN report explicitly states we have only 12 years before the 2030 deadline, which will see catastrophic changes to our planet. To conclude, on the fossil fuel divestment bill, this bill could be looked at as a way of the Irish people saying to fossil fuel companies that we are no longer going to make it profitable for you to destroy our environment. It was really through the combination of activism by communities and civil society, public sector organisations, divesting, and opposition politicians that made the government take notice. It is really a story of that nexus that made this bill possible. I would like to thank you for your interest in this bill and good luck with all your campaigning in the future on behalf of all our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Pringle. Thank you for that leadership, for that inspiring story of the bill. Historical bill indeed. So, well, now we'll hear from Deirdre on. I was glad that Deputy Pringle already mentioned it, that the example of the universities starting to divest was an interesting, powerful injection of momentum into the political process as well. So, would love to hear more about how did these brave students got the university to divest?
Yeah, so I'm gonna, I suppose, tell the story of how we got our university, Trinity College Dublin, to divest from these coal, oil, and gas companies. And I guess I'd really like to show it as an example of how students and also the wider public here in Italy and also all over the world, how you can get involved and how you absolutely do not need to be a financial expert to get involved in this fight. People are the most powerful in it. So hopefully I can illustrate that. But first of all, I'd love to just... Perfect. I suppose first of all, I'd like to just go back to 2015 when really this university divestment campaign started. And myself and my fellow students, a few of us were really waking up to just how serious climate change was. And to be honest, we were scared. And quite a few of us, we weren't first and foremost environmentalists. As I say, we definitely weren't investment experts. But each of us was realizing that the outcomes of issues that we cared about would depend on whether the world got its act together on climate change. So issues such as human health, or world peace, or reducing inequality, or ending extreme poverty, all of these would depend on what would happen with climate change. And we knew too that most of us would live long enough to experience serious climate impacts firsthand. And that frightened us. And we were also painfully aware that for so many of our brothers and sisters in the global south, climate change wasn't a future fear. It was a present-day reality that was already destroying their crops, flooding their homes, and in some cases, even claiming their lives. So what could we do? We knew that changing our own individual lifestyles to reduce our personal emissions was really important, and it was the moral thing to do. But we knew that that on its own would be utterly insufficient, given the scale of the problem and given how little time there was left to prevent irreversible and catastrophic climate change. And as Bill McKibben had pointed out, and this really drilled it home for me, even if 10 or 15% of the population worked all out to reduce their carbon footprints, well then the reductions in emissions that would achieve would be nowhere near enough, nowhere near what we need. But much more hopefully, McKibben had also proposed that if 10% of us, 10% of the population, if we all worked flat out to change the system, then that would be more than enough. A really engaged 5 or 10% of the population can make massive political and social and structural change. So for us students, it became clear that we needed to work collectively for a citizens-driven and a system change approach to tackling climate change. And it soon also became clear that this system change approach had to involve taking on the fossil fuel industry. And you might ask, why focus on the fossil fuel industry? And I think we talked about that quite a lot already, which is quite useful for me. But I suppose why it became really obvious to us, one of the things is we watched this Do the Math movie by Bill McKibben. I'd really recommend it. It's free on YouTube. And it alerted us to a piece of research that financial analysts in London had done, and Lorna referred to it earlier. But basically what they found was, you want to go on, was that the fossil fuel industry have 5 times more fossil fuels than we can use if we're to avoid catastrophic climate change. 5 times more. But despite that, they're continuing to explore for even more fossil fuels. So their business plans are completely incompatible with maintaining a planet that's safe for human civilization. And despite this, governments all over the world are continuing to support this industry. Why? I'll tell you why. Because the fossil fuel industry has huge political power and influence. It spends huge amounts of money giving donations to and lobbying politicians and policymakers and society leaders. And that's making it really difficult for us to make any really the significant inroads into the climate progress that we need. And I suppose in the past we all know that that fossil fuel companies denied climate change outright. And some of them still kind of fund that kind of climate denial. But today, really, one of their big tricks, one of the fossil fuel industry's big tricks in terms of spreading climate misinformation is promoting the myth that gas can somehow be part of the solution to climate change and that we should be expanding the role of natural gas. In reality, we know that the exact opposite is the case. We need to be closing down coal and oil and gas projects well before they reach the end of their lifespans, and certainly not opening up new ones. But despite this, the fossil fuel lobbyists are relentlessly pushing our politicians to grow the role of gas, to expand new gas infrastructure, to build new gas pipelines. So this political influence of the fossil fuel industry is such an obstacle to climate progress. And that's why myself and my fellow students decided to start this campaign to get our university to divest from fossil fuels. And divestment really excited us because what it was a tool that we could use to start breaking and eroding away this influence, political influence and political power of the fossil fuel industry. And at first, as I say, we were a tiny campaign. Nobody knew what we were doing. We had no investment knowledge, very little campaigning experience, but that really wasn't a barrier. You know, there are brilliant resources, and I want to point out this website that can make it very easy for you to get involved. And gradually our numbers grew. We turned up early at lecture halls, grabbing a few minutes before the lecturer arrived to tell the students about what we were doing. We ran all kinds of novelty stunts and actions on campus to get more people involved and to raise our profile. We had petition stalls. We held open meetings, made comedy videos on social media to catch students' attention. And then when the student union elections came along, we attended hustings and we got candidates to pledge their support for our campaign. And turned fossil fuel divestment into a bit of an election issue, really. We got the student newspapers involved, and they kind of started competing to cover our story, which was great. And then one more. And then we got lots of academics and well-known public figures to sign an open letter to the college board. And then we also wrote reports outlining why they should divest. You know, outlining the financial and the ethical reasons. And as our numbers grew, our publicity and our public visibility started to grow. And the university board and the investment committee had to agree to meet us. And we started having a series of meetings with them. And I suppose what I'd love to say is that our campaign had that quite local focus in terms of getting our specific university to divest. But we knew that we could be much more impactful if we collaborated with the wider national and international divestment movements. So we collaborated with other Irish universities, with TROCRA, an Irish NGO, and with other climate organisations. And when we build connections like this, we really build power. You know? And TROCRA, say, were able to give us brilliant advice and put us in touch with investment experts who helped us persuade the university that, look, this is the financially right thing to do too, even if for a selfish point of view. And then from our side, us students, we were constantly thinking of how we could leverage all this people power that we were building so that we could contribute to Thomas's campaign and Trocher's campaign to get the Irish government to divest. And we now had this bunch of engaged students who were ready to talk to their politicians. So when our university eventually did agree to divest, we made sure that every single member of the Irish Parliament was contacted multiple times to be told the news that Trinity had divested and to ask them to do the same. And we worked really hard too to get lots of media coverage around Trinity's divestment announcement, knowing that that would help in terms of stigmatizing the industry and that it would really maximize the impact of it. And then the day after Trinity divested, we mobilized all our students, go back one actually, and arrived in front of the Irish Parliament with a big banner saying that our university had divested and that the Parliament better divest pretty fast too. So it was time to use our campaign victory and all that people power that had built up to demand much, much more, to demand that the nation divested. But Thomas has told you about that story. I'd like to just quickly talk again about the international nature of divestment campaigning. Because during our campaign, we realized that the people of Dakota, the Standing Rock indigenous people of Standing Rock in America, they were having this big fight against a huge pipeline that was going through their land. And we really wanted to support them. But we were miles away. But we realized that through divestment, we could stand in solidarity with them and we could demand that our university divest from them. And it eventually did, and it was covered in the Irish national newspapers, talking about their story. And I suppose that is really relevant to here in Italy, because I know there's this big TAP, Trans-Adriatic pipeline, trying to be built through the south of Italy. And again, it might be hard for you to get there, to get to the physical location, but using divestment, you can campaign against, you can campaign to get the institutions that are investing in the companies that are behind this pipeline, get them to divest. There are institutions all over the world are investing in these companies. And also target the banks that are financing this project. And one more. And again, there's banks all over Italy and all over the world that are involved in this pipeline. So if we can get involved in that, we can all join struggles against pipelines and other fossil fuel projects, even if they're far away. This is a really good webinar to watch about this. And then one more. Yeah, I'll skip through that. Yeah.
Thank you, Deirdre. Very, very inspiring words. Made me think of this famous quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world." Indeed, it is the only thing that has ever has. So, very clear example of that. So now we'll hear from another perspective in Ireland, the one of faith, the Church of Ireland and the Catholic Church.
Thanks, Thomas. We don't have much time we could talk for a long time about the Irish experience, but I just wanted to say that the third kind of leg of this, the growth of the fossil fuel divestment movement in Ireland, has been the growth of a faith-based organisation to mobilise the churches and other faith actors to look at their own resources and to divest from fossil fuels. And really, the key to this is Laudato Si, because Pope Francis has given a real mandate to the churches to move away from fossil fuels without delay. It's a paragraph in Laudato Si. So Trocher, the Irish Caritas organisation, took this on board and seconded me out of my normal job to focus just on this role of divesting the churches and from fossil fuels. So if you're interested, we have worked to mobilize bishops, mobilize communities in order to support the churches to divest, but also to, as Deirdre said, to engage in these public movements for fossil fuel divestment. So as well as the students, when Deputy Pringle brought the bill to the Parliament, you also had the priests and the nuns and the lay people and all the churches in front of the Parliament as well, working alongside the students. So it was you could feel that the momentum was building. And one of the things that we organize, to work with churches is sometimes quite different to working with students or working in Parliament. And the church organizations wanted to really understand from a very, let's say, kind of not a rational perspective, but from a moral perspective, what is the case to divest? Faith-based organizations understand ethical investments. For many, many years, the churches have divested from sectors that from a Catholic point of view or a Christian perspective, they regard as unethical. So we produced this new document, which is available online in French, Spanish, and English, and we also have copies available, to look at what is the ethical case for investments when climate change is taken into consideration. And it moves from the perspective of Catholic social teaching to look at how we need to update our thinking with regard to care for the environment, and then how we leverage that in a very step-by-step way to change our policies in our organizations, whether that is a parish or a diocese or an entire bishop's conference or a religious organization. We've had huge success in this campaign. We've had to work with great patience and to work at the timelines that the bishops worked at. But I'd just like to end with a short clip of our bishops' conference making their announcement on divestment. In Ireland at the moment, the church is under huge attack and is coming to terms with many, many problems within the church structures. But it's quite astonishing that this has, it's 2 minutes. I think do you want to see the clip? If we could just play, it's just 30 seconds. It's just to say that this is a really good news story for the church. And in an era where the church is under huge pressure, the round of applause that this bishop received in a multi-faith setting said everything about the church waking up to climate change and to the future of our young people. So if we could just play the clip that's here, and we finish it after the round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. This evening, on the eve of Pope Francis' historic visit to Ireland, I wish to announce and welcome the decision of the Irish Catholic Bishops' Conference to divest from fossil fuels.
I think we can finish it there. You can watch the full video online.
The Bishops' Conference.
You can stop the video.
Has signed the Globe.
So, well, thank you, Lorna. So there's, of course, a lot more to be discussed about this issue. There will be a breakout session now on the issue of finance and divestment and investment. So you're invited to continue the conversation there. Just to close, I would like to close with a quote from Laudato Si. Pope Francis delivers a strong message of hope throughout the entire encyclical. I think that today's panel is, and especially the case study, that there's an indication that there is potential for change. There's a very concrete example here for transforming this financial system into one that promotes people on planet. And the Pope says in Laudato Si, injustice is not invincible. The climate crisis being one of the best examples of injustice at its worst, with a very, very concentrated, powerful vested interest blocking action. This campaign able to combat that is a testament to that. So thank you, and to be continued.
Grazie, grazie tanto. È molto interessante, vorremmo continuare, ma siccome poi ci aspettano altri argomenti, un minimo di respiro dobbiamo darlo. Ma grazie, e poi in fondo alla sala ci sono dei tavoli dove metterete anche tutti questi documenti e avremo occasioni di continuare ad approfondire. Veramente grazie per questa forte testimonianza. Adesso cerco di dirvi molto breve come proseguiamo, perché adesso andiamo in diversi luoghi. Intanto una cosa importante, questo pomeriggio ci sarà questo momento di workshop dove lavoriamo con le mani. È importante non mancare questo momento, che sarà un momento forte di Prophetic Economy. Chi non si è iscritto lo deve fare subito all'intervallo o prima del pranzo, perché dopo non si può più, è da organizzare, perché quasi tutti andremo fuori. Quindi non dimenticarvi di iscrivervi a quel momento molto importante. Adesso avremo le sessioni parallele che sono state preparate, vedrete ancora tanti altri argomenti molto ricchi. Troverete appesi fuori da questa sala e da tutte le sale le indicazioni dove si svolgono queste sessioni. Quelli che si sono iscritti qua hanno già ricevuto un bigliettino e sanno dove andare. Chi si è iscritto online guardi qual è la sala dove deve andare e troverà davanti alla sala il suo nome sull'elenco che conferma che è nel posto giusto. Chi non si fosse iscritto può andare in sala B, che è l'unica sala dove non si può andare senza prenotazione, perché tutti gli altri c'è un certo numero. Quindi facciamo così. Saranno 2 sessioni, una prima alle 11 e un'altra alle 12, e quindi cambierete luogo e anche le sessioni cambiano luogo. Quindi anche in sala B saranno 2 cose diverse. I ragazzi continuano in questa sala A alle 11. Quindi adesso abbiamo un breve break e poi in sala B chi avrà bisogno di traduzione si porti la cuffia, perché non ci sono lì, sono tutte qua. Quindi ve la portate e non dimenticare di riportarla. Ci ritroveremo un po' prima delle 3, alle 3:10, così vi daremo le spiegazioni per come si svolge il pomeriggio che comincia alle 3. Va bene per tutti? Buon intervallo e buone sessioni.